Innovation transforms the world, turning the status quo upside down. Innovation created a healthcare system that not only improves the lives of veterans, it transforms the lives of healthcare professionals with unique opportunities to work with industry thought leaders while serving our nation's heroes. The Department of Veterans Affairs, where innovation ensures those who served our nation are served by the very best. See how a career at VA can transform your future.
Hello, happy Tuesday, and welcome to VA Careers Live. Talk About It Tuesday. My name is Tim Blakeney. I'm a national recruitment consultant for the Veterans Health Administration and your guest host for today's show. First off, thank you for joining us. We know that your time is valuable, and we appreciate that you spend some time with us each week as we talk about VA careers. Since this is the second Tuesday of every month, our regular viewers will know that this is question and answer day. If you happen to be joining us for the first time, these questions are selected from audience members like you that have submitted across social media in this past week. Before we begin, I want to remind you that we want you to be part of the conversation. So feel free to leave any comments or questions for us in the comments section below, and our team will do our best to answer your questions and address your comments. There's one other thing I'd like to ask. I would like to ask for each and every one of you to put in the chat box the city and state that you're joining us from, as well as what field that you have an interest in, whether it's nursing, police officer, or something along that line. I would really appreciate doing something like that. With that said, let's get into some of the questions that came through to us this past week. The first one comes from Barbara Marion. She asks, what's a military resume? So, hi, Barbara. I hope you're joining us today to hear the answer. Thank you for that question. Being retired from the Air Force, I can relate to this. My first resume after retiring was written for a military position and not a civilian position. It basically contained terminology and acronyms that, unless you were in the Air Force, you really wouldn't know what I was talking about. So basically, a military resume is one that can only be understood by someone from the military, whatever branch of service. Recruiters in federal government and the private sector, when viewing such a resume, will often reply with information on where to build a resume. The team that is helping me out here today, they're going to post a link in the chat explaining or that shows you a military style resume and how to write one that is good for the federal government. So hopefully that answers your question. Next question comes from Jamara Green. And the question is it appropriate to ask for feedback after an interview? Sometimes the interviewers don't respond back. So, Shamara, absolutely, it's appropriate to ask for feedback, and I encourage it. It's unfortunate if you're not hearing back from somebody. But if you don't, I would like you to just try and reach out again a couple of different times, maybe reach out to the point of contact on the USA Jobs announcement, and just kind of continue. Maybe reach out to that interviewing person and just ask them that, you're only looking for feedback as to what you could have done differently during the interview. And I hope, you're successful. Again, I hope people in the VA, the hiring managers, I hope they reach back out to you and answer questions on how you could have done better. Next question comes from John Lee. And John wants me to speak to how military rank can affect GS levels. What expectations should we have, and how do we better adjust about the kind of positions military veterans apply for? So, hi, John. Again, thank you for your question. First, let me say there are charts out there that compare military rank to GS levels. The team is going to post a link to one such chart in the chat box for you to take a look at. So to address the first part of your question, military rank is really not going to have any bearing on your GS level. Yes, there's that comparison chart that should be posted. You can see a good example would be a GS 13, according to this chart, is the equivalent to a major. Well, I don't mind telling you that I retired from the Air Force. I retired as an enlisted person. I'm a GS 13. I don't know that I consider myself the equivalent to a major, but whoever did this chart, that's what they did. But again, I'm going to just say that your military rank doesn't really have a bearing on the GS level. So when a military member applies for a position with the VA or any federal government agency, they're going to apply to a position that they qualify for based on what is in the announcement. And the key here is qualification. So take a look at your qualifications and, apply for positions that you meet. GS9 positions meet certain qualifications. GS 13 positions have certain qualifications. I just encourage you to look at the announcement and apply for what you actually qualify for. Okay. Do not have, I would say, it's okay to have expectations. And I guess what I would use for a comparison here, if you retired from your respective branch at the highest military rank, that'd be Sergeant Major in the Army, Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, Master Chief in the Navy, please set your expectations. Don't, it took you 20 plus years to get to that rank and status. Don't expect to come into any federal agency or any position anywhere and start at the top. I will say that, there are exceptions and you may come in and start at the top, but for the most part, set your expectations a little bit lower. Look at what you've done throughout your career. I mean, it took you 20 years to get there. Keep your expectations realistic and apply to positions based on the qualifications shown in that job announcement. Hope I answered that well, but again, next question came from Dr. Juan Carlos Pantoya. It says, I'm a foreign doctor and I'm looking for an opportunity to serve the VA. Is there a program specialized in foreign doctors? So, Dr. Pantoya, thank you for your question. I have to say that I don't know of any programs in the VA for foreign physicians. What happens with a foreign physician is you take something called the ECFMG after completing a foreign medical school, and you take and pass this test, and that allows you to enter into a U.S. residency training program. Once you complete residency training, you are then considered qualified as a physician. That's the minimum qualification, as a residency trained physician. So in short, I don't know of any, special programs for foreign doctors. We do have programs if you've completed, the ECFMG and gone to a residency. So hopefully, again, that will answer your question. Next question comes from Michelle Saul. Is there any information regarding what is going on with the VA caregiver program currently? Michelle, thank you for your question. This program is pretty large and complex, so I'm going to have the team paste a link in the chat to the VA caregiver program so you can take a look and hopefully get your questions answered. So again, they're going to paste that link in there. It goes specifically to the caregiver program with the VA, and you should be able to get your questions answered. Good luck with it. Next question comes from Kimberly Peters. Are licensed professional counselors able to use same grade GS-12 as a licensed social worker? So, hi, Kimberly. Thank you for your question. Again, I hope you're listening. I hope you asked the question, so I hope you came back to hear an answer. I went ahead and reviewed the qualification standard for licensed professional counselors, and depending upon the position, the grade level goes from a GS-11 through a GS-14. So I'm going to say, yes, you can be a GS-12, which is the same, I guess, the same as a social worker that you're saying. But it's going to be dependent upon the position you're holding as a licensed professional counselor. So hopefully that will take care of that. The next question comes from Michael Tillish. Do you hire new RN new grads? What are the degree requirements for new hires, ADN or BSN? And I'm also a vet. Well, first, Michael, thank you for your question and thank you for your service. And for those of you out there that are listening, ADN stands for Associate Degree Nurse. And BSN is a Bachelor of Science Nurse, being the 4-year program. So in answer, yes, the VA does hire new RN graduates. There are 3 levels to Nurse 1, and each one shows the ADN and the BSN. So to answer your question, Michael, yes, we do hire ADN nurses. And like I said, there are 3 levels of Nurse Level 1. And as you progress through the VA, you can go all the way to Nurse Level 5, which is, the highest and probably at the twilight of your career there in the VA. So next question comes from Megan Brieda. It says, if the position states the location is negotiable after hiring, how is it determined? Is it similar to a PCS, which stands for permanent change of station, when you give a list of preference options and the final location is chosen? So, hi, Megan. Again, thank you for your question. Basically, if the announcement states the location is negotiable after hire, it means anywhere in the country. It's important to read the announcement fully to understand it. If truly anywhere, then it should also say it's a remote position. So I hope that answers your question. I just encourage you to read the announcement fully, and the announcement should explain if the location is truly anywhere in the country. So the next question comes from Isaac Collins, and he wants to know, does the VA let service members do SkillBridge? Hi, Isaac. Thank you for your question. And it appears that you're in the service, so thank you for your service. And yes, the VA has SkillBridge opportunities for civilian careers at different offices and programs throughout the VA. Again, the team that's helping me out here, they're going to place a link in the chat to the SkillBridge program with the VA. Encourage you to go take a look at it and see if there's something in there that you can use to come to the VA and learn about different opportunities. This link will give you additional information. There's also a frequently asked question document that the team is going to place the link to that in the chat. It's just a little 1-page document that discusses SkillBridge with the VA. So next question comes from Manuel Ybarra. It says, are there openings in the VA for retirees who have an associate's in criminal justice? Ybarra is looking to get out of the security field in Vegas. So again, thank you for your question, Manuel. And yeah, there's opportunities for retirees with an associate degree. I guess my best advice is to go to vacareers.va.gov or to usajobs.gov and search positions of interest. Once you see something that you like and you qualify for, again, make sure you read that announcement completely for the qualifications and only apply if you've qualified. But yeah, there's any number of positions out there. I don't know exactly what you're looking for, other than I do know that you don't want to be in criminal justice. So again, look at those 2 sites, vacareers.va.gov or usajobs.gov, see what you qualify for, and kind of go from there. The next question comes from Tawana R. Tawana says, I'm a veteran with a bachelor's degree. I have years of claims adjusting experience in personal and commercial claims. My resume is specifically for the VSR role and currently working as an LAS. What advice do you have for me to get an interview? So, hi, Tawana. Thank you for your question. So again, the team, I found an announcement on USA Jobs, and the team's going to place that link in the chat for you to take a look at. I just recommend that you look and apply to any of the 60 plus locations that are listed. I don't know where your interest lies as far as location, but take a look at this announcement. It's a national announcement. And once you've applied, you can follow up with the point of contact on the announcement to make sure that they've received your application. You should also get notification through USA Jobs that your application was received. And for me, it's difficult to answer why you're not receiving interviews. But if I go by what you have to say, I would just say, you know what, keep trying. Keep applying. Persistence and patience are key when applying to the Department of Veteran Affairs or even any federal agency. Be persistent and be patient, and you will eventually get there. It'll be worth the wait. So next question comes from Sean H. I'm a certified technical trainer. Where are jobs that are focused on training? So, hi, Sean. Thank you for your question. There are various educational training opportunities in the VA, and I would recommend that you look at VA Careers or USA Jobs for a training specialist position. That or search for education. There's a keyword search that you can use, and I would say use training specialist, education, something along that line to see what kind of positions are available for a technical trainer. So next question comes from Christopher H. Christopher says, I've been working in IT for 20 years. I have several certs as well. I'm also 90%. I have enough skills and experience to at least get an interview, but I don't ever get referred to the hiring manager. What am I doing wrong? Well, hi, Christopher. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your service. Unfortunately, it's really difficult one to answer without knowing what you were doing when you were applying, but I'm going to try. Some things that I would suggest: start by reading the announcement. I say that you've heard me say that several times. That announcement is going to tell you pretty much everything you need to do to qualify for a job. Once you know that you qualify, I would highlight your resume on what's being asked for in the announcement. If they're asking for some of these certifications that you have, make sure you highlight that so that it, kind of jumps out at the hiring manager or the human resource specialist that's looking at your resume. So highlight it and, just basically make it stand out. Make sure that they see your qualifications and those certifications that you're bringing to the table. Possibly do a cover letter tailored to the position and state why you should be hired. I understand it's difficult to talk about yourself, but in my opinion, this is a must in a cover letter. Let them know that you are the best thing since sliced bread and you should be offered the job immediately. Just let them know what you're bringing to the table and all those certs, 20 years of experience. Unfortunately, I don't know what you're doing wrong, but hopefully that answers it, gives you a few tips to do, and good luck, and hopefully we'll see you in the VA at some time. Next question comes from Marissa Gonzalez. Says, who can I connect with to go over my current resume and the positions that may match my skill set? I'm looking to remake my resume and continue my education to match positions I qualify for. I'm having a hard time locating the job titles. Well, hi, Marissa. Again, thank you for your question. If you're a veteran, I'd like to point out to you a website that's vaforvets.va.gov. The team will put that in the chat box for you to go and take a look at. This particular site will tell you about resume writing and careers and whatnot. If you're a civilian, I just encourage you to go to Google and search for companies that offer this service. As far as finding jobs that match your skills, I would recommend you go to usajobs.gov. You can do a keyword search in the job title area. An example would be, if you're a writer, put that in the keyword job title area, put the word writer in there, and you're going to see several writer positions that will pop up for you to look at. Again, I don't know, what titles you're looking for, but again, if you go to USA Jobs and do that keyword search on a job, you'll see various jobs that pop up. So Good luck. I hope that answered your question. Next question comes from Danny Monroe Rusnak. And I would appreciate any resume tips for a former Title 38 employee separated in 2006 seeking a GS position. So, hi, Denny. Thank you for your question. And I'm just going to say, based on your question, I'm going to say you're no longer wanting to hold a Title 38 position, but are looking for a GS Title 5 position. So, best advice I could give you is write your resume based on your current qualifications. Title 38 is basically a doctor, dentist, nurse. So I'm guessing since 2006 that you left, that you entered into a different career field. I have no idea what that would be, but write your resume based on your current qualifications, whatever those may be. And then once you have that completed, go to seek out opportunities at VA Careers or at usajobs.gov. And good luck. So, next question comes from Gloria Taylor. USA Jobs resume versus civilian sector resume. What's the preferred format? Well, hi, Gloria. Thank you for your question. Since you're applying for a federal position, I would tell you that a federal resume is in order. It is a unique resume for a couple of reasons. Federal agencies prefer to see your citizenship status, a veteran status, if any, relevant education and coursework, in addition to the traditional education information, professional references, including the name, title, and contact information. So it differs a little bit from a private sector resume. And I would tell you, if you were applying for a federal job, to use a federal resume format. Again, that can be found online with just a quick Google search. Or if you're a veteran, you can go to that VA for Vets website as well. So the next question comes in from Nicole F. Nicole says, if I've applied to VA jobs in the past, how soon should I apply again? So, hi, Nicole. Again, thank you for your question. And the way I would answer this is apply to a position as soon as it comes open. Regardless of past applications, just, again, apply again. Just keep applying. Be persistent and patient. So, next question comes in from Letitia Spikes Cornell. And she says that while living in Europe, she worked for the U.S. government, career conditional, family member preference, since I have not worked for the government. I would like to know how to apply for jobs and find out if there are any type of preferences. So, hi, Letitia. Thank you for your question. And I'm going to thank you for your service. If you were over there with the military in Europe, thank you. According to USA Jobs, which is where I went to find this answer, that's managed by the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, a military spouse is eligible for a non-competitive process. And again, the team that's supporting me right now, they're going to put a link in. I encourage you to go to that link, take a look, and see what types of, where you would qualify, what kind of status you could potentially have. So good luck. So some general questions came in. There's like two or three of them that I'm going to address. The first one was, on average, how long is the hiring process? I did a lot of research, found a few different answers, and I'm just going to say the average time to hire is 90 days within the VA. There's obviously different things that can apply there. So just use that for right now. Another one that came in is, what's the VA's policy on responding to applicants who are not chosen? So when you apply for a job through USA Jobs, it goes to a system called USA Staffing. And what happens is the human resource specialist looks at those, your application, and qualifies you or not. And that system will reply back to USA Jobs, to you specifically, letting you know, it'll send you what we call a notice of results, a message that gives you an update on your status, that you are being considered for an interview, or that you didn't, put in all the correct paperwork and therefore not going to be considered. So I'm going to just say that you're going to be notified of your application status through USA Jobs. And that includes if you're not chosen. So let's say you make it through the vetting process, you get to the hiring manager, and you actually do an interview. The result of that interview will again be sent back through to you to USA Jobs. The last thing that I kind of want to talk about, it's about applying. I'd like to take a couple of moments to talk about applying for a job at the VA. I would like to say that I believe there's a job for everyone with the VA. We're the largest integrated healthcare system in the United States, and we have opportunities in so many fields like housekeeping, police officers, maintenance personnel, doctors and nurses, and a whole lot more. The team's going to place a link in the chat that examines the application process and a timeline to provide some context here. They'll put that link in there, and I encourage you to take a look at it. It's a good article on applying to the VA. So I'd like to also take a moment to talk about expectations. You heard me talk about it a little earlier on one of the questions, but I'd just like to say, as much as we would all like to start at the top, we really need to consider getting our foot in the door first. I feel confident that everyone has heard that before. Get your foot in the door. Make sure that you read the announcement thoroughly and understand what the job entails, and make sure that you're qualified for it. Don't apply for something that you're not going to be considered for. Why get that disappointment? Look at those qualifications, look at what is being asked for, and apply for what you do, what you need. I'm just going to tell you, it took me 32 applications and 2 interviews to be hired for the VA back in 2011. And I thank the individual profusely that hired me. He knows who he is. I talk about him all the time. His name is Mr. Russ Peel. So anyways, I'm just going to tell you that persistence is a must. And I encourage you to just stay the course, keep applying. No matter how long it takes, your new VA career will be worth the wait. Join our team and find out what it means to serve the best patients in healthcare, veterans. So with that, I'm going to start addressing some questions that came in live. And let me take a look at it here. Somebody asked, Sonia asked, when should pay be discussed? So Sonia, if you're looking at a VA position, on the announcement, the pay band should be there. And depending upon the position, if you're in Title 38, that pay band will be there, and there'll be a range, and you'll be talking about that during, after your interview. Once you've been selected, you'll be discussing pay with human resources and the hiring managers. If you're in a GS position, that's public knowledge. You can just Google GS pay scale around, in the United States, and it'll show you by location what a GS5 makes, or a GS13 in Colorado Springs, for instance. That's public information. So hopefully you can see that, and and if it's not a GS5, it's a Title 38, you'll discuss it once you've been selected. Is it worth applying if you have no military background but do have a civilian? Absolutely. It's worth applying to the VA. There's no greater calling. Come take care of veterans, whether that's in housekeeping or as a police officer or a doctor or nurse. Definitely. Regardless of your military status, if you don't have that background, by all means, please apply. I don't know the statistics, but the VA is made up of both civilians and former military personnel. So absolutely. Can you talk more about tuition assistance? I burned up my GI Bills, so tuition assistance would help me out. Is there an age cap on tuition assistance? I'm older, but would like to complete my bachelor's. Tuition assistance, there's a couple of programs that we have out there called Education Debt Reduction Program that are offered with various jobs. And then there's an SLRP for other jobs as a GS worker. and not all are, offered. So I guess the way I would answer that is look at the job and see if it's being offered, and talk to human resources. Are there jobs that provide on-the-job training? I'm not familiar with any. We do have trainee programs, but on-the-job training, I think, again, I would encourage you to look at the announcement and see if it discusses that, and go from there. So with that said, I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to go ahead and close up. We'll wrap up today for the day. I hope the information has helped you in some way. If you've submitted questions, again, thank you for the time to reach out to us and be part of our broadcast. We really appreciate your interest. If you submitted questions that didn't get answered this week, we'll do our best to get to them in a future broadcast, or reach out and get an answer in the comments section. Looking ahead, if you have any questions or comments like to address in future broadcasts, reach out to us. Let us know, and we'll do our best to get them into future broadcasts. You can visit us at vacareers.va.gov. Drop a comment here on LinkedIn or other social media accounts. Again, I would just say thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next week. Take care.